In your pack, the biography for Karen Brunas is in there. And as I explained earlier, Karen can't be with us. But please read her brief biog. But I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to JP Brunas. JP is the father of their son, an 11-year-old boy with allergies to eggs, nuts and peanuts. With wife Karen, they have gone through changing shopping needs of their son as his allergies have changed over the years. So JP has also manufacturing experience, having owned a hair cosmetics business, and therefore, perhaps you could sort me out later, and therefore understands the impact of legislation on businesses. So it gives me enormous pleasure to ask JP to come and join us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and I'd ask the room for a little bit of leeway. I'm not used to being on this side of a podium. Before I was asked to present this in lieu of Karen, I didn't know anything about allergy thresholds. But obviously, to be able to have a presentation, I have looked into it a little bit to get a brief understanding. But in way of background, our son was kept having a cradle cap when he was young, and we didn't know what it was, and Karen had quite a challenge to get it looked at. We finally found a doctor that said, well, you should have him checked for allergies. So he was assessed, and it was found that he was allergic to eggs, nuts, peanuts, and had a delayed hypersensitivity to dairy. As soon as we took the dairy out of his diet, his cradle cap cleared. We avoided, from that day, he was only 6 months old, it was through a blood test that these allergies were discovered. We avoided all these foods. Now, as he's gotten older, we've carried out challenges. He failed a baked egg challenge, but he thankfully has passed challenges for hazelnuts, cashew, almonds, pistachios, and walnuts. So it would appear that he's growing out of his tree nut allergies, but he's still very allergic to eggs and peanuts. Now, what is interesting, he had an accidental exposure at school where he ate a cake that had up to 20% egg, and he showed no signs of a reaction. So we're hoping that he's also growing out of his egg allergy. That will be assessed when we next go to see our specialists and they carry out skin prick tests again. Now, in terms of thresholds, what is safe? As a parent, we don't know. We don't know if he's going to react to a mouthful, if he's going to have a whole chocolate bar. He's not always next to us, can't always control him or his friends. So we don't know what safe is for my child. And what's being measured? I have listened to a couple of the previous speakers, and frankly, it was straight over my head. Didn't understand proteins and this and that and the other. It needs to be simple. Which allergens have established thresholds? Obviously, some of those questions were answered, but there is a clear gap in what is known. Which allergens don't have thresholds, and how will they be determined? Why are they proving more difficult than the others? And I think any rules that come in must come in when everything is known. Otherwise, it makes it really difficult for someone to understand what's going on, what they understand, what they don't understand, and what to believe. Now, and if you have multiple allergies, how do we distinguish allergens with and without thresholds? If they're listed, not listed. Celiacs, you have different levels. So it's okay to claim that something is gluten-free at a certain level, but that's not good enough for an allergy sufferer. that causes great confusion to the layperson. Now, nut allergies, will different nut types be labeled instead of generic nuts? Because obviously there's lots of different nuts. Some people are allergic to some, not others. How will that stack up? And then you have different consumer risk appetites. The previous speaker was talking about how and the challenges she faces with her own allergies. And it's very interesting to have that perspective, actually, from someone who works in that field, visits factories. I'm sure she has a different understanding of risk than someone else who has not seen these factories or seen the processes that are involved. Now, multiple systems, with the transitional coexistence of the precautionary allergy labeling and threshold-based labeling, would they coexist? If they did, that would cause immense confusion. How would one know which system is being used? Will the absence of may contain labeling mean that the product is below a threshold? Hasn't been tested, so it's unknown. Tested using a company's own standards and safe based on that method. Which system is safest for the consumer? Allergen absence and wash down to below a threshold. Now, I think it became quite apparent from the previous speaker that the factory that kicked her out had a whole clump of allergen in a pipe. Well, if she wasn't there, that allergen would have gone into a product, but it would have only been a few. So it's understanding if something is on a line or not on a line, which allows someone to make a decision as to whether they're prepared to take a risk eating something that came from that factory. Understandability. I know that's not a word, but I'm sure if I ask everybody here, you know what it means. And that's, I think, what needs to happen with the allergy labeling. Consistency and clarity, so that when I'm trying to teach others to interpret labels, so like my child, family, grandparents, to school, or if you're trying to speak to call handlers, when you call companies to ask them, what are your processes? How does it work? Do you do this? Do you do that? They can answer in a simple, straightforward manner. And going back to the previous speaker, life would be simplified if we could all speak the same language. So, where will these thresholds apply? Is it pre-packaged supermarket food? Is it prepared food? So when you're in a restaurant, would they need to use the same kinds of basis to assess what they're serving? How will thresholds affect the current declarations? Since the new legislation came out, it has been much easier from a consumer perspective to eat out and things. There's definitely been a bigger increase in awareness from all the various stakeholders around allergens, and it has made it much easier. Now, how many people have allergies that are sitting here today? So we'll ask you not to participate in the next step. It's very small. Can people actually read these examples of a label? Struggling. So this is me shopping for my son, allergic to eggs and nuts. So first one, I think, can see the allergens listed in bold. So we've got milk, wheat, whole wheat. So nuts, eggs, not listed. No precautionary or no advisory warnings either. Is it safe to eat or not? So this particular product, having spoken to them, we know that the absence of a may contain means that they've done their risk assessment and it is safe to eat. Second one. Allergens are still in bold. We've got milk. But here, they've got allergy information this time. But they add that it's made in a bakery that handles nuts, but no peanuts. And that the food's not suitable for celiac sufferers because of the methods used. Now again, this is safe, and we can take the decision that, okay, they don't use peanuts, so there's no possibility of contamination. We're happy to go with that. This third one, that's hazelnuts. So there's not many ingredients, it's just hazelnuts, but there is an allergy advice. May contain other nuts and sesame seeds. What are the other nuts? Is it peanuts? Is it not peanuts? In this case, it does include peanuts, so that's not suitable. And the last one, all the allergens are listed in bold, and they may contain peanut, tree nuts, and soy ingredients. Under threshold labeling, the peanut might no longer be listed. As a consumer, do I trust that there's no possible risk of a peanut being present when before it had, and now it is? Makes it quite tricky to know in terms of the changes and understanding the processes behind it. Because I think, as was shown, the risk of exposure is usually through error, either the labeling being incorrect or a contaminant entering the product, not that it's present all the time. And as a consumer, it's good to know the process, because then you can make your decision as to whether you're prepared to buy a product that you know is made on the same line as other products that you're allergic to. And that brings me to the end of this perspective from a parent.
So a question for JP. At the back, very back row.
You say that you feel safer eating out since the food information regulations came into place. What particular questions would you ask when you go to a restaurant to find out the allergen information?
Well, more recently, a lot of establishments seem to have like an allergy list or an allergy menu where they break down all the different ingredients and the cross-contamination possibilities. So once you've had a look through the menu, you can decide, okay, we can eat this, we can eat that. And the fact that they've put together these documents means that in the background there is work being done where they are assessing the different levels of risk in terms of the contamination, or looking at where their suppliers or the suppliers' methods of production when it's just something that they put in an oven. So it's that level of background work that gives you the confidence that it is safe to eat there. However, there's always the assessment of the person that you're dealing with as well. So if you're speaking to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about and says, okay, here's the allergy menu, that can also be off-putting as well, because they don't necessarily think about the cross-contamination risks within the kitchen. So it's an overall assessment, but there's a clear progress that is making it easier, and there's definitely a much higher awareness of the problems.
Once more, thank you very much indeed.